Good morning from Happy Valley. We are here for the CFP opening round game for the SMU Mustangs today against the Penn State Nittany Lions. This is the Pony Up pregame show presented by Origin Bank. I am Rich Phillips, and we are thrilled to be here at Beaver Stadium today, where the Mustangs will kick off at 11 a.m. against Penn State in round one of the college football playoff. First time ever for the SMU Mustangs to be in the CFP, and of course it's the new expanded 12-team edition of the CFP. We'll have a radio broadcast for you beginning at 10:30 this morning with a pregame show 11 o'clock to kick off over on 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket. We will also be on Sirius XM Channel 82 for our radio broadcast today. And joining me on the radio broadcast as well as right up here in the press box at Beaver Stadium as always is Scott Garner. And man, what a thrill it is to be here in State College, Pennsylvania, Happy Valley. I don't know what they call this place. I know I'm just happy to be here.
We're happy to be here. This is going to be a great game, Rich. Been watching these two teams for the last couple of weeks, as I'm sure everybody has, and should be a great matchup today.
Yeah, obviously took a little doing to get here for SMU, and maybe not quite the way we wanted it to be last Saturday, or rather 2 weeks ago on a Saturday night with a 34-31 loss to Clemson in the ACC championship game. And it was funny, you and I talked about it since, and we both had very different feelings after the game 2 weeks ago.
We did. You know, when we came back after that horrid start that we had, we were down, two touchdowns in a very tenuous situation. 5 minutes into the game against Clemson, you and I were like, oh, boy, how's this thing going to go? And I don't think we had a great feeling at halftime. In fact, I talked to a lot of folks who thought the game was over at that point. I'm glad that the men in blue on the other side of the field didn't have those same sentiments, because that comeback was unbelievable. And that last drive, 16 plays to go down and score a touchdown, I thought at that moment, no matter what happens at this stage, you can't keep the Mustangs out.
Yeah, that last drive was 16 plays, 79 yards. Kevin Jennings was 9 of 12 for 62 yards, and, of course, the game-tying touchdown on that drive. And then it all goes for naught with a kickoff that's returned to the 45, a 17-yard pass completion, and a career-long 56-yard field goal. After the game, felt like, well, the CFP is going to figure out how to do it to us again. And I thought for sure Alabama was the logo we were going to see come up on Sunday morning.
A lot of people had those same sentiments, but, again, you can't
Nick Saban did.
Yeah, he did. But when that show started, you could see the look on his face. I thought, this is going to go really well. I think we're going to be okay today.
Yeah, it was just a crazy night there in Charlotte a couple weeks ago. As you said, Scott, a little over 4 minutes in, it's 14-0. You're down 24-7 at halftime. It's just an amazing second half for SMU. And we talked so much about the offense with that second half comeback. You don't do it without the defense. No. Only 10 second half points, really only 7 that they gave up. Clemson only had 140 second half yards. And how about 9 yards rushing after half for Clemson?
9 yards rushing.
Game?
But look at the total yards in that game. SMU had 458 total yards, Rich, and gave up just 326. It didn't feel like that the way that the game was going at times, but I think you have to point to one stat that shows that this SMU team can compete against anybody, and that's the fact that you're taking on a Clemson team that's top 20, and you give up 64 yards rushing to those guys. You're going to have that kind of performance today, because this Penn State team can run. All they did was run for over 290 against the number one team in the country 2 weeks ago. You must stop the run today.
Yeah, that's where all the headlines are Tyler Warren, their tight end, who, by the way, very merited with 88 catches on the year.
Yes.
But they've got two tremendous running backs, each over 800 yards in Singleton and Katron Allen. And they're a weird pair in this day of college football, that they've been together all 3 years, they've stayed together all 3 years, and they almost have identical career numbers, and they both just stayed here at Penn State and continue to plug away, and it makes them so dangerous on offense.
They're dangerous on offense, and what's interesting is, yes, they've got a Big Ten offensive line, and they wear teams out, and they win games in the second half, and they do it with backs that are less than elite, although they've got great numbers, as you mentioned, but this is an explosive offense. This Penn State offense, they have 65 plays this year of 20 or more yards. That's the most in the Big Ten. And this is a team that runs the football a lot. Nobody runs the outside zone like Penn State. You're going to watch this offensive line. These linemen are going to step in the bucket, and they're just going to run down the line of scrimmage. And they really they require Singleton and Allen to look for a cutback lane. This is what they do, but they are really good at it. They know what they're doing. They're better, I think, run blocking than pass blocking. Oregon's front four got pressure without having to blitz, and if SMU can get pressure without having to blitz, this may go SMU's way. We'll see.
You know, and it's interesting, too. Rhett Lashley talked about it earlier this week, what they do on offense. They run about the same 2-3 plays when it comes to run game.
Yeah.
It's just eye candy. There's all kinds of different formations and motion and shifts that they'll do to try to fool you into which run they're going to do. Run left, run right, or up the middle.
Yeah. They do a lot of pre-snap motion, obviously, to detect if the defense is in man or zone without question. But, you know, this Singleton and Allen, they've drawn comparisons to Lydell Mitchell and Franco Harris back in the day for this team. They're really good, as you talked about. RPO game, that's something that you got to watch for because they're really good at it. But when they do run that run-pass option, you really have to make Aller beat you. You can't let him get to the edge.
Your reference to the Steelers from the 70s was really good considering where we are. It kind of fit with the timeliness of where we are. By the way, this stadium, Beaver Stadium, built in 1960, which also was when they built this room, apparently, too, that we are broadcasting from. It is the third all-time meeting between SMU and Penn State. Mustangs haven't won. 0-1-1. 1947 Cotton Bowl was a 13-all tie. Just to show you what a different world it was back then, Penn State couldn't stay in any hotel in the city of Dallas because they had African-American players on their team. They had two, and they weren't allowed. They had to stay at an Army base outside of town. Penn State won in 1978 here, 26-21. They're 11-2 on the year, 8-1 in the Big Ten. Their only losses were to number 4 Ohio State, and then last week or 2 weeks ago to number 1 Oregon in the Big Ten title game. That was a wild game too. I think 45-38. Just everybody kept scoring in that game.
They did, and I don't know how many points we're going to have to score today. Some people feel like we might have to be in the 40s, but this SMU team can do that. We average 39 points a game. We're only giving up 21. But I think what really allows SMU to be able to hang with Penn State, our ability to get it done in the trenches. We have given up 93 yards per game, and if the season were to end today, Rich, I believe it's a program record.
Rushing, yes.
Yeah, rushing for stopping the run. This SMU team really good at that.
This Penn State team, number 4 ranking in the CFP, but because of Boise State and Arizona State getting the automatic buys in the first round, they wind up as the 6th seed here in the bracket. Two tremendous players on both sides, on each side of the ball, one on each side. And they're both All-Americans, by the way. And the defensive end, Abdul Carter, a consensus All-American, 60 tackles, 19.5 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. If you want to know what this guy looks like, he looks like Micah Parsons because he wears the same number, which is a tradition here at Penn State of 11.
Plays a lot like him, too.
Absolutely plays a lot like him, not only with all the havoc he causes in the backfield. Watch him when somebody's 5 yards downfield, and he'll chase him down and catch him from behind.
Chase him down from behind, from the line of scrimmage. It's amazing. Great pass rush from this guy. Oregon ran right at him. I thought it was interesting. They ran right at that guy early, ran straight at their defense. He likes to drop in pass coverage, too. We'll talk more about him. But, you know, one of the keys today, Rich, I think, is going to be, can you create a couple of turnovers against Penn State? We've got good turnover numbers right now. In fact, our turnover number, I think, about even. I think we have 21 turnovers. We've given the ball up 21 times, which is not terrible. But I thought this was a little bit disconcerting when you kind of dig into the numbers. SMU has only forced 4 turnovers the last 6 games.
Yeah.
We are -6 in turnover margin the last 6 games, and that's after forcing 17 turnovers the first 7 games.
Well, it's kind of weird because they flipped numbers. In the first half of the season, it was takeaways and not many sacks.
Yeah.
In the second half of the season, it's been sacks and not many
that's
takeaways.
right. Yep.
And so they haven't been able to put both together like you would like to see, but they at least have been causing problems in one area or the other all year.
Yeah, and what's interesting is we're forcing fumbles. We've got 13. In ACC play, we forced 13 fumbles.
How many did we recover?
1.
What?
1. Can you believe that?
Wow.
That's incredible.
It's hard to do.
That's very hard to do.
Meanwhile, the other All-American that –
But, we forced 2 fumbles at Clemson, but they were so quick to get back on the ball.
The other All-American here for Penn State is Tyler Warren, 88 catches, 1,062 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's also run for 4 touchdowns. He's also thrown a touchdown pass. We will see him take a snap or two from center for sure this afternoon. He was a high school quarterback as well.
It was, in short yardage, they're going to get him. You'll see the Aller be in the shotgun. Then they'll motion the tight end Warren. He'll go right under center, take a snap, and it'll be a sneak for Warren. It's amazing. This guy can catch the ball. I think he can play any position on the field. He's that good.
And he's only about 6'5", 260. That's all.
That's all.
So a heck of a challenge today, and we're thrilled to be here for SMU and Penn State in the CFP. An 11 a.m. kick. We'll have radio coverage on 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket beginning at 10:30 on the radio pregame show. Of course, I'll talk to SMU head coach Rhett Lashley as part of our pregame this week. Speaking of Rhett Lashley, let's get to our segment, Rhett to the point. Some clips from SMU head coach Rhett Lashley at his press conference earlier this week. Hey, it's 27 degrees here right now. We just had a little snow flurry as we were walking up to the stadium about an hour ago. That appears to be gone. Sunny skies, and really going to be a beautiful day here. Just chilly, maybe a little breezy at 27. And Rhett says, look, you can't let weather affect you.
These guys, and I know our guys do, and I know their guys do, aspire to play in the NFL. They aspire to play championship playoff football, which we're getting to do right now. Well, this January, guess what? The playoffs are going to go through Arrowhead in Kansas City, and they're going to go through Buffalo, and they're going to go through Lambeau, just like they do most years. And you're either on one of those teams if you're in the playoffs, or you're playing one of those teams. And the best in the world do it. And, I know the Chiefs last year had that game that was like 10 degrees or whatever. And Rashee Rice, who had played here, didn't like cold weather. You know what he did? He went out and played really well. And so our guys have to do that. The weather is only going to be an issue if we allow it to be an issue. So we know it's going to be really cold. It's going to be really cold for them as well. So it's our 11 versus their 11, and that's going to decide the game.
And it should be, like I said, a pretty decent day as the snow appears to have lifted. They had a tarp on the field, by the way, this week for the snow earlier in the week, and then there was a little dusting overnight when they had taken the tarp off, but they cleared that with some blowers out here early this morning after we arrived at the stadium. Penn State's backup quarterback, Bo Pribula, out of this game because he's entered the transfer portal and decided not to stay. SMU backup quarterback Preston Stone also has entered the transfer portal. He has decided, though, to stay until the season ends for SMU, and Rhett says it's a heck of a mess and there's a simple solution.
Yeah, the real easy thing is you don't have a transfer portal in December. That's the real easy answer, and it solves all the problems. Like, why in the world would we put kids in a position where they got to decide, do I transfer or play in the playoff? Do I transfer or play in my bowl game? And it scholastically doesn't make sense either because your years end in May, not in December. And so we gotta look long and hard at the schedule. Coaches have been saying this for the last 3 or 4 years with all these changes, and what happens is we just make all these random changes because we don't want to get sued or we don't want to do this or we don't want to do that, and we don't think about the long-term effects it has on the young people that we're supposed to be serving. So I hate it. I hate it for our players. I told them that Monday, I hate it that you get a chance to play in the college football playoff, yet you are either forced to decide, do I go in the portal or not, or let's call it like it is. People are bombarding our roster trying to pick people off our roster, and we're trying to focus on the playoff. Oh, and they got finals. Oh, and it just goes on and on and on. So, yeah, it's real easy. Don't have a transfer portal in December.
You'd think there's some simple solutions. Doesn't always mean they happen to problems like that. There, as Rhett said, guys are getting bombarded trying to see if teams can take them away from SMU. One guy we know for sure is not leaving. It's Kevin Jennings, the Mustang quarterback, putting out a video early in the week saying that he will be back, and obviously that's huge for Rhett and the team.
I mean, it's really important to us and to him to have, someone who's already, I see, preseason Heisman watch list and all that stuff for next year, and we're not even done with this year, but it's big for our program. It's big for the continuity and consistency here. I think it's big for him. He wanted to be here. There was never a doubt about that. Again, same thing. It's unfair that he has to be figuring that out between the end of a championship game and a playoff game, but it is what it is. And so we all, as coaches and as adults, we're easy. We can adapt. You make the system terrible. You make the rules hard. You make it not probably flow the way it should. We can fix that, but it's the kids that aren't. They shouldn't have to be dealing with that. So, but glad that he always wanted to be here, never wanted to be anywhere else. We were able to make that happen, and he was able to put that out there. Gets that off his shoulders, I know, too.
Quick little table talk here, gentlemen. How many times have you heard an SMU coach talk about preseason Heisman watch for one of the players?
Before the previous season's over? Yeah.
Even during the
Yeah,
season.
At any time, yeah.
Anytime.
It's been 40 years probably
Right,
since
right.
that came up.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to Rhett to the point. Sorry, I had to just check in to make sure I wasn't the only one who was taken aback by Rhett Lashley saying that, but it is true. By the way, Kevin Jennings not the only guy announcing he's coming back. I believe he said Logan Parr is. I know I saw Isaiah Wacobia and some others announcing they will be back here next year for SMU. Today, it's Penn State. We talked about it, the tight end, Tyler Warren, and obviously a huge challenge for the Mustang defense.
I don't know if you defend him. I think you try to just contain him and slow him down a little bit. He's going to get his. I mean, he's a matchup problem. If you play man, he's definitely a matchup problem. You know, we had that with R.J. Maryland in some ways. And if you play zone, he's still a matchup problem because he's so big. And all zone becomes man once the ball's in the air anyways. And, you know, whether you have one guy, two guys on him, and they do a really good job of moving him around. He plays a bunch of different places. So, you know, it's kind of like when we had a Rashee Rice. Like, he was going to get his catches, you know. And so, obviously, we hope that we can keep him from being touchdowns and explosives. But, I mean, he's special. There's a reason he won the Mackey Award, and he can do all the things he can do, and he's got a big-time NFL career ahead of him. So we definitely got to be aware of where he is. You know, rarely do you see a tight end where the offense kind of runs through them, and to some degree that's what they do with him.
Yeah, definitely, and especially as we mentioned, Bo Prabula, their backup quarterback, has left the team entering the transfer portal. They used him in every game this year to run some quarterback run game. Tyler Warren, the tight end, likely will handle that role today, should they do it against SMU. Lastly, this is game number 14 now for SMU, a season that started back on August 24th, if we can remember that far back to week 0. Jonathan McGill, the Mustang safety, met with the media this week and was asked about how he feels physically this late into the year.
I think we're good. I think Coach Greers does a great job in, you know, training us to continue to withstand, you know, the longevity of the season. We're not, you know, killing ourselves on back squat, but we're also, you know, running and hitting speeds that we need to be hitting in order to, you know, stay healthy with soft tissue injuries and things of that nature. And so body-wise, I think I'm feeling good. I know guys on the team are feeling similar to me. It's almost, we had that 10-day break to where guys who were banged up from the Clemson game ended up, you know, getting a chance to, you know, rest a little bit, have extra days for recovery and more treatment. And so I think the way the schedule is with, you know, 10 days in between games was something I was thinking it was just going to be like the next week. I'm like, dang, like, you know, that's going to be a lot of games in a short amount of time. But having that buffer and that break is something that's beneficial for us.
And that is Rhett and Jonathan to the point here on the Podium Pregame Show. It's brought to you by Origin Bank. Origin Bank knows what strong teams can accomplish. By working together, Origin's trusted advisors help you keep your financial goals within reach. Get the right people on your team today at origin.bank, member FDIC. The third member of our broadcast crew is our sideline reporter on the radio side. It's Steve Lansdale, who joins me here now with his view from the sideline. And, Steve, I can see that you've got layers on. You've got your boots on. I know you've got a coat back there. You're ready to go down on the sideline. It's going to be nice as far as the sun out and no snow, but the temperature and the wind may not be so nice for you down there today.
Yeah, we may have different ideas about nice.
Beautiful. How's that?
If you're
Beautiful.
looking for me on the sideline, find those heaters and the warm benches at halftime. Yes, it's cold, and we've seen pictures as recently as last night that the field at Beaver Stadium covered in snow. That is not an issue today. They had a tarp underneath that snow, and the field is clear and clean. But the conditions will still impact the game because of just the temperature. Throwing and catching a frozen ball is different. It's difficult. It makes it a little bit slippery. It affects the kicking game. And while there's not necessarily snow and ice on the ground, it can affect footing because this grass will be a little bit soft as the water melts into it. Some of the Mustangs have taken an interesting approach. There were a handful of guys on the team who flew yesterday in shorts and sleeveless T-shirts, I assume in an effort to show that we are not going to let the cold bother us. And as we sit here in the press box right now, some of the players are out here warming up, and a handful of them are running around without shirts on.
Somebody's in shorts and no shirt down there.
Yeah, there are a few guys down there with shorts and no shirt, which first of all means they're much tougher than the sideline reporter.
That goes without saying, by the
right.
way.
Well, yeah, okay. You didn't really have to reinforce that, but you're not wrong. But it is psychological, right? If you don't, as Rhett Lashley said, if you don't allow the cold to bother you, if you can force that out of your mind, it will impact the way you can play. Will it make the ball warmer? No. Will it make it easier to kick or throw or catch? No. But at least you don't. We've all seen games where it's so brutally cold that you see players huddled over on the sideline, just shivering and shaking and looking at the clock, waiting for it to be over. The Mustangs look like they are taking a good approach as to trying to get that out of their heads. You can warm up on the plane on the way back to Dallas. But the cold is something you can prepare for. I talked to the equipment staff, and they said they're not bringing an unusual number of options as far as gloves or different kinds of shoes, basically the same load of equipment that they always have. Will there be some changes made? Sure, there will, to accommodate the cold, but half of this is going to be mental.
You know, the biggest thing is, too, that people have to remember, because they think it's going to be such a weather advantage for Penn State. They've not played a December 21st game here in Happy Valley anytime recently, I don't know, ever.
Right. All their bowl games are in Florida
Right.
and California and Arizona and places where it's warm. So, but that's true. Their December games have been played in warm climates, but they still go to class in this, and they still walk outside in this weather. They are more used to it than the Mustangs. That is true, but the Mustangs look like they have a healthy approach to trying to get through this.
They all hate it, though, just like we do.
Yes. Yes.
There's a reason
I used to
Steve's-
live up here, and this is one of the reasons I moved to Dallas.
Absolutely. All right, well, as we look around here at Beaver Stadium, we keep looking, and it seems like the seats never end. We have been to a bigger place, Michigan, in 2018. That's the only place, though, in college football that's bigger than Beaver Stadium with over 106,000 seats.
Right, and thinking back to that game in Ann Arbor, the stadium didn't look as big as this place. This place looks like something you might be able to see from outer space. The biggest crowd that SMU faced during the regular season this year was at Louisville, which was about 50,000 people. Count the postseason, and they had 53,000 in Charlotte a couple weeks ago when SMU faced Clemson. Add those two crowds together, and it won't equal what's coming into Happy Valley today. So that will obviously impact the game as well, simply from a communication standpoint. The players don't really care that the fans are going to be yelling and, talking trash, whatever. That happens every week, whether it's 1,000 people or 100,000 people. But the communication is going to be significant. When you look at Kevin Jennings calling a play, you're going to see a lot of wide receivers and tight ends looking into the center of the field to see when the ball is snapped, because they're not going to hear it. They're not going to hear his cadence. And the other aspect of it is substitutions. When you have assistant coaches on the sideline shuttling a group of guys in and pulling a group of guys out, that's going to have to be done mostly visually. Yes, there will be someone out on the field with a headset in his helmet who can tap a teammate on the shoulder and say, get out, someone else is coming in. But when they're doing group substitutions, it's going to have to be 11 guys looking at the sideline, finding that coach and determining those substitution packages based on what they see rather than what they hear.
They're having the whiteout here today, and I think we've all seen the video of a few years ago when Michigan was here during the whiteout, and on the first play of the game, Jim Harbaugh had to call timeout because they couldn't get themselves lined up right because it was too loud.
Yeah. I mean, this place is enormous. It's bigger than. Is there an NFL stadium this big? I don't think so.
I believe so, no.
Right. I mean, and it will be full. I know that James Franklin, Penn State's head coach, was lamenting during the week the fact that it's holiday break and some of the students have gotten out of town, and that is true. I think there will be few, if any, empty seats in Beaver Stadium today. It is still the college football playoff, and Central Pennsylvania lives and dies for the Nittany Lions. This place will be packed, and it'll be loud, and it'll be cold.
Maybe they'll only have 100,000 here today.
Oh, is that all?
That's all,
oh,
not
well,
106.
They may as well forfeit.
All right, that's Steve Lansdale with our view from the sideline. We'll hear from him throughout the game today over on 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket with the radio broadcast. It is SMU and Penn State here as we bring Scott Garner back in with me here and meet the enemy. We mentioned earlier Penn State 11-2 with their only losses to fourth-ranked Ohio State and number 1 Oregon. This is the 11th year they've been under head coach James Franklin. He's 99-41. He has at least 9 wins in 5 of the last 8 years, 10 wins each of the last 3. But, Scott, there's one knock on him.
What's that?
He's 3-17 against top 10 teams. And while SMU is the 11 seed in the playoffs, They're ranked number 10 coming into this game today.
They are. Obviously, hey, Penn State's going to have to work to beat this SMU team. This SMU team has shown a willingness to not give up, and they were so resilient in that game 2 weeks ago for the ACC title. And I'm telling you, we didn't have 106,000 there in Charlotte, but that crowd, that atmosphere was tremendous preparation for what we're going to see today. Don't underestimate that. Obviously, Michigan, you made mention of it, Steve, that they had to call a timeout in their first play because it was so loud in here. That game really helps us in so many ways.
Although I will say, there's probably, 15,000 SMU fans that were at that game 2 weeks ago. There won't be that many here because this is a home game for Penn State. There's a little smaller allotment for the visiting team.
Right, that's true. So that there's a little difference there. But again, don't underestimate our willingness to overcome the adversity. I don't think we'll have the problems early on like we had in that game at Charlotte.
The offense combination in the backfield of Nick Singleton and Katron Allen for Penn State's been fantastic. They're the only team that has two running backs with 820-plus yards on the season, and they're almost identical. Singleton, 838 and 7 touchdowns. Yep. Allen, 822 and 6 touchdowns. And career-wise, they almost have the exact same numbers over 3 years, both right around 2,600 yards in their career.
Talk about Singleton for a minute. Fast, elusive, he's explosive, very solid, too, in blitz pickup. Fantastic zone runner. Both of these guys are. That's why they're so good running the outside zone, that stretch play. Skilled in the RPO game. At the mesh point, did fumble the ball. Singleton fumbled the ball on the exchange on that fly sweep, second play of the ball game against Oregon. So let's see if that doesn't creep up today. It caught a touchdown, though, out of the backfield, up the seam. Linebacker could not stay with him. That's how good he is. But, hey, they're going to give the ball to him on fly sweeps. Oregon didn't let him get to the edge, keeps his eyes upfield, always looking for that misidentified crease at times, but he's got great hands on swings and screens. Very good running back.
And they will no doubt look to run. They average per game almost 38 rushing attempts per game. Yep. They only average 28 pass attempts and 19.5 pass completions per game. There's no doubt it is run for Penn State.
Now, Allers, he's very serviceable. I'd say he's better than serviceable, but, he's got the fourth most touchdowns in program. He's got 60 total touchdowns. He can get the ball out. Runs a lot of RPOs, you mentioned, but you've got to force the quarterback, Aller, to keep in that RPO game. He will throw into tight windows. This kind of got him into some trouble against Oregon. He's not afraid to throw in tight windows. And, hey, when we went man coverage, after the first quarter against Clemson, we thought, you know what, they're just torching us with us running zone. We went a lot of man from the second quarter on. And our cornerbacks and safeties and backers, we were great in pass coverage. We had 7 breakups against Clemson. And if Aller gets a little feeling like he's comfortable and starts taking risks, I would not be surprised to see him make a few mistakes.
He's thrown for almost 2,900 yards this season, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Pretty efficient, though, at a 69% completion rate for Penn State quarterback Drew Aller. Defensively, Penn State 9th in the nation against the run, 6th in total defense. They only allow 282 yards and 16.5 points per game. Some very minuscule numbers for their defense.
Yeah, and we talked about how the Mustangs only allow 93 yards a game. That's 4th best in the country. This Penn State team not bad either. 104 yards a game they allow on the ground. That's top 10. That's number 9 in the nation. They are very stout against the run. But what does pop out to me is the fact that Penn State scored 57 touchdowns this year and only given up 22 touchdowns.
Wow.
That's a very telling stat.
Rhett Lashley this week called their defensive end, Abdul Carter, the best defensive player SMU has seen in his time working here. As mentioned it at the top of the show, a real good comp for him is going to be Micah Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys. He wears 11, just like Micah did here, just like other guys, LeVar Arrington, other great linebackers over the years have for Penn State. And he's a guy who was a linebacker, and they've made a full-time defensive end. He's that edge rusher, but he still has a lot of ability to go downfield, too, and make plays.
That's why you see him. Sometimes he'll line up in the line of scrimmage, and then they'll drop 8 in coverage, and he's the one that drops back because he is a converted linebacker. He's good in coverage, super quick, great pass rush from Carter. Oregon ran right at him early, as we talked about at the top of the show, but he will drop in pass coverage, takes great angles in pursuit. It's one thing to be quick, but when you're smart, too, and you know how to play and you take good angles, that's another thing. Sometimes he squeezes down off of a down block and will give up the edge some, and sometimes he does get washed down inside because he's a little over-aggressive at times. He has a tendency to jump on the hard count. I don't know that that'll be an issue today because we're probably not going to be able to do a lot of hard counting with 106,000 fans here today, but sometimes he'll line up inside on passing downs, and he will drop in coverage. He's a very athletic player.
Beaver Stadium here opened in 1960. Their record is 322 and 82 all time in this facility. Let me give you my stat of the week here, Scott. It is 30. That is the number of yards Brashard Smith needs in any form or fashion to set a new single-season SMU record for all-purpose yards.
Wow.
He's run for 1,270 yards. He's caught for 303, and he has 242 kickoff return yards. He did lose 2 on his only punt return of the year, by the way, against BYU, but 1,814 all-purpose yards on the year. Just to put in perspective, in recent weeks, he's only passed guys named Jerry Levias, Eric Dickerson, Zach Line, James Prochet, Mike Richardson, and Emmanuel Sanders, basically the best of the offensive players in SMU history. Only Arthur Whittington stands ahead of Brashard with 1,843 all-purpose yards in 1976, but over 900 of his were on special teams. Brashard has done almost all his damage on the offensive side of the ball and been awarded as an All-American this year, too.
And I thought maybe in the title game he ran inside better than he has all year. I thought the spin move that he made early on that first inside zone, I thought it was incredible. Ends up getting 13 yards, I think, off that play, but he showed incredible burst against Clemson, super twitchy. He's got over 100 yards rushing in 4 of the last 6 games. You mentioned the all-purpose yards. Rich, he's become a complete back and a true all-purpose back. He is a fantastic running back right now. And this is his first season to really be a running back.
And he has 1,270 rushing yards. It's 9th in school history. He's easily going to move up to 4th because he only needs 11 yards to move past all those guys and make it into 4th. And by the way, his 35 receptions this year are second on the team too. And that's the one thing that really I think people don't realize about him is how dangerous he is when he runs downfield because he's got those wide receiver qualities that he had for 3 years at Miami.
And I think the wide receivers and the running backs have benefited from his toughness. He finished off runs so well against Clemson. And that's a trait that's not something that's innate. It's something that you have to work on to get good at. And everybody that handles the ball on this SMU team has gotten great at finishing off runs.
It's SMU and Penn State, an 11 a.m. kick today at Beaver Stadium in the college football playoff.
They said we weren't ready. They said we didn't belong. But you know what they didn't know? You can't kill what's born to run. We were down, sure, but not out. Every setback, every hit, every bruise, it only made us stronger. We took the hits, we took the heartache, but we never lost our fire. It's been a long road, but every step has led us here. A place where the stakes are high, a place where legends are made. And trust me, we're not here just to play, we're here to win. But that fire they give us makes us who we are. Ready to prove to the world that we're back.
Down the sideline, and it is an SMU touchdown. Here goes Brashard Smith. SMU in front first. It is intercepted. Wild way, it's caught. Jordan Hudson, touchdown. Slips one in. Daniels makes a man miss. Touchdown. Rogers trailed in the backfield. For Daniels, touchdown. Boy, how easy. Kick is blocked. Right in a touchdown to Brashard Smith.
What an opportunity for the SMU Mustangs today here in the college football playoffs. Special thanks again to Origin Bank for sponsoring the Pony Up pregame show as well. Origin Bank knows what strong teams can accomplish by working together. Origin's trusted advisors help you keep your financial goals within reach. Get the right people on your team today at Origin.bank, member FDIC. Scott, it is an amazing opportunity. The CFP committee chose the 11-2 SMU Mustangs over a 9-3 Alabama team. I think we all agree it was the right choice. I don't know that we all believed it was actually going to happen, and it's an amazing opportunity they've been given because they made that right choice.
Great opportunity, and I love the disposition of the team coming into this game. SMU feels like it can win, and you have to believe that you can win before you can beat a team like Penn State. And this SMU team believed that they could come back against Clemson. They did, fell a little short. Everything had to go Clemson's way there, the final 16 seconds for them to beat. I think if that game goes 5 more minutes, SMU wins the ACC title. That's how that game was going. Clemson very fortunate that thing was down to the wire.
There's a reason why SMU kicked and didn't go for 2 after that last touchdown, because Brett Lashley knew they were going to win the game in overtime.
No question.
They just didn't quite get to overtime.
Get there, yep.
But by the committee selecting SMU over Alabama, they also, for at least the time being, have preserved conference championship games, because that would have been a real mess if a team got penalized for playing an extra game when Alabama, they weren't invited to play an extra game because they lost too many games. But if you penalize them for playing the extra game, that would have been a real blow to the system we have with the conference championships.
And everybody getting Lane Kiffin grief this morning. Well, should have beat Kentucky, should have beat Florida. He's griping about that game last night with Notre Dame. Well, hey, how about those guys? Alabama, you can't go into Norman and score a touchdown. I mean, I thought that right there disqualified them. I thought that right there completely. They've had great wins, no question. You cannot go into a place like that and look like that and expect to, win over SMU and getting into a playoff. You just can't do that.
Did Lane Kiffin puff out his chest after their season finale win over a 2-win Mississippi State?
Thank you.
Pumping up how awesome they were for that one?
Don't get me started, Rich.
We need to avoid that. All right.
I know.
Let's get some final thoughts here today,
Okay.
Scott. Keys to success for SMU against Penn State.
We'll talk about this too, Rich. And before we get to that, I do have a couple of numbers here. Last 3 games, SMU 20 of 42 on third downs. That's almost 50%. But our opponents, 13 of 47 the last 3 games. That's just 28% on third down. I think that's going to be key today. But getting to the actual keys to success, you've got to play physical.
That was a bonus key right there is what that was, Steve.
You've got to play physical today. SMU's got to play the most physical game of the year, have to come out and set the tone. You may have to live with a few penalties early. A couple of personal fouls may not actually be a bad thing to go against SMU today. You've got to come out and set the tone today. That means stopping the run. Penn State ran for almost 300 yards against Oregon. Number 1 team in the country. They did that against. The Mustangs, though, this year have done such a good job. If you give up 200-plus on the ground today to Penn State, you're going to have to score 40 points, I think, to win this ballgame. That's key number 1. You've got to play physical. Key number 2, play well early in the game. Keep it close. You can't win a game in the first half, but you can certainly lose this game in the first half. Keep the game close today in the first half. And, hey, we never talk about this, Rich, and this is a stat that most people just throw away. Time of possession. Generally a throwaway stat, not going to be that today. I think it's critical today. Penn State feast on tired teams in the second half of games. Their defense is built to win the game. Their offensive line is built to win the game in the second half. SMU has won time of possession just 3 times this year. SMU must win time of possession. I think that's where the turnovers come into play. You've got to get a couple of turnovers today. That will help your time of possession. Got one more key. Key number 4, create those turnovers. Yeah, mentioned create. SMU's forced us 4 turnovers the last 6 games. 4 turnovers we forced the last 6 games. We did force 2 fumbles against Clemson, just couldn't pounce on them. We forced 13 fumbles against ACC teams this year, only recovered 1 of those. Got to get some turnovers today.
Well, Scott's already in his overcoat, and I haven't even opened the windows yet here in the press box. Just wait till we do that for the radio broadcast. You'll really love it up here. 27 degrees here in State College today, and that's going to be about the high. Some breeze as well down there on the field. Matter of fact, I can see the flags on top of the uprights blowing around pretty good here at Beaver Stadium. All right, the radio broadcast is on 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket, as well as Sirius XM Channel 82 and the SMU app. We begin at 10:30 with the pregame show. I'll talk to SMU tight end Matt Hibner. He's a guy who's a veteran of the Big Ten, of course, playing at Michigan and playing in yet another CFP game for him after being part of a national championship last year at Michigan. I'll also talk to head coach Rhett Lashley on the pregame show. 11 o'clock will be our kickoff for the game today. SMU and Penn State in the CFP. I know everybody's thrilled about it. Thanks for joining us here on the Pony Up pregame show today. For Scott Garner, Steve Lansdale, and our engineer back here, John Smith, I'm Rich Phillips, and let's all pony up.